All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me for our fourth series in the phys ed implementation for the Alberta Physical Education and Wellness curriculum. If this is your first time joining me or watching, I've spent kind of the last 4 months starting at an overview of the curriculum and breaking down some of the embedded theory and some of the embedded pieces within that. From there, we went on to how to look at potentially building a year plan. And from there, we took a look at teaching games for understanding. I just finished up a fairly big series on practical pedagogy, which we were looking at for specialists and generalists. So it's primarily for the generalists to kind of hone your skills in the gym. So how can you change some of your practice in small ways to maximize the effectiveness of what you're doing? I'm not a researcher. I'm not a university professor. I am a teacher. I finished half an hour ago, set up all my videos, and now I'm here. So this is kind of my take on things, and I hope it serves you in some way. So this is a two-part series. So all of these bigger sections, what I've tried to do is I've tried to break them down into manageable chunks. So in this one, I'm going to be looking at some of the theory of spatial awareness and tactics. We're going to take a deep dive into the curriculum in those specific things using a summary tool that I spent many hours creating last summer to allow us as physical educators to talk about specific outcomes. And the other one is I'm going to give you a couple of scope and sequencing. So we're finally into some of these more practical things. And other than that, the big thing for me in these sessions is for you to try and get one or two things. Okay, I'm going to go through quite a few concepts here, but like everything in teaching, if we can figure out a way to just tweak something, to add one or two little things. I always like to use my class as an experiment. So, and again, I'll be on this afterwards as well. Right. So this is me. Who am I? I've been teaching for over 24 years. I had the absolute privilege and pleasure of working with over 25 of the phys ed greats as a young teacher and throughout my career. So when I was a brand new teacher, I was told that I would be presenting, and that was part of my professional development. So when this opportunity came up, I thought after about 23, 24 years, maybe it's time. I have taught grade 1 to grade 12 phys ed. Currently, I'm teaching phys ed and junior high math, and I've played quite a bit around, probably 8 years, teaching some of the thematics in elementary as well. That's good. Enough about me. Let's get going. This is just a breakdown of what we're going through. I give you guys the whole slide deck as well. They'll be provided in PDF form. So as always, I do like to just want to take a moment and acknowledge the land that we're all on across Treaty 7 and 8 in this incredible province. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit whose voices and footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Spatial awareness. Big thing that I always want people to keep in mind is that in phys ed is called physical education. In some of my previous videos, I talked quite a bit about the difference between just playing, having competition, just getting into like the actual games of things versus building a solid scope and sequence. So for my elementary generalists, if I was to ask you how to teach a group of grade 3s to write a paragraph, we might give them a sample to get a baseline, but then chances are we're going to break that down into much smaller chunks. When I work with phys ed teachers around the province, the things that seem to be the most aha is how we can take a basic game, let's say, for example, tag, and actually turn tag into a whole unit. But not only turn it into a unit, but turn it into something that I can check off like 3 or 4 of my cusps in the new curriculum while improving the kids' like transition between different games, their mobility, their balance, all at the same time. In Alberta, I mentioned this in my last series as well, we have currently 2 report card stems. If you look at how many cusps we have in this new curriculum, 2 is not very much, right? So there is a professional obligation for us to find out ways to make sure we are tracking all of these. If you're interested in that, I do have a little mini session on the asynchronous session on that as well. So what to look for? The big thing when we're dealing with spatial awareness, and in a nutshell, spatial awareness is literally, are you aware of who you are in the space you're in and what's around you? Okay, so we're going to break this down into four main kind of categories, and I'm going to go through these in more depth as we move through. But what I'd like you to think about when we're starting to kind of talk about them is, what is your progression currently? So for me, spatial awareness, which in the curriculum, if you dive right into it, we're looking kindergarten to grade 3, grade 4. Then it quickly turns into tactics. So tactics are advanced spatial awareness. For those of you who weren't in the curriculum session, in that movement section, so it's I call it the 2 series. There's 3 distinct subcategories within that curriculum. Okay, the first one is literally spatial awareness and tactics. The second subset is in like manipulation and like movement skills. And then there's the social emotional. So in this one, for moving safely through space, this should be our primary goal in all grades, but especially in the K to 3. So simple progression is, can they travel in a straight line? And what's not in here is without hitting other people or things. Now, go into a kindergarten class in the first couple of days, and this is not something many of them can do. Okay, next thing, can they travel safely? Is that around the space? Can they follow a line of movement? Can they change directions without hitting others? And last one, can they adjust their level, speed, and direction? Right? These other 3 we'll talk about, but at the end of this, go back and wonder and just inquire for yourself. How do you teach kids to see space? How have you taught kids, or do you have a progression for lead and follow? And the last one is, do you have a progression to help kids move creatively through space? Okay. So definition, spatial awareness literally is the ability to understand your relationship to objects and other people in the areas around you and how you can move through space. Adults do this brilliantly. Kids, and especially growing junior high kids, not so much. Tactics are a little bit different. This starts to come in grade 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this is our actions and strategies that help us achieve a goal as an individual or as a team. It also helps us put parameters on a game so everyone can succeed, and also how we identify roles. This is not new to our curriculum, but the fact that they've made it a little more up front and center means that we have an opportunity now to actually dive into this. When I taught high school, one of the things that I found really challenging was that the expectations for the grade 12s was not that much different than the expectations for the grade 10s. If you look at many elementary programs, what happens is that we play certain games, but the tactics don't really improve. A lot of that comes from an older style of teaching skills, which is skill, 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 let's apply it to a game. Versus the teaching games for understanding, which, if you're not aware of it, again, something else to look at, not now, we'll focus on this, but something down the road to maybe take a look at. Because what it enables you to do is to build tactic, and then work the skills into that form. It's a beautiful, beautiful framework. So again, I like to make things efficient. So if you've seen my summary document, which I'll show you a little bit later here, the summary document is literally, I've taken every knowledge, understanding, and skill and progression and put it into a little box. So you can see your whole grade in a snapshot. Basically, in kindergarten to grade 2, we're developing spatial awareness. We want to make sure they can move safely. If you look at the safety cusps that we talked about 2 series ago, there's some really nice stuff in there about what do you need to move safely, or what is a safe environment. So we can embed all that stuff together. It's the other neat thing about this curriculum is that you can actually combine different areas of these cusps and do them in 2, 3 months, or even 1 month, do a focus on it. Grade 3s, now we're reacting and adjusting. So the language shifts to, can they move through space, to can they react and adjust. So the complexity of games that we get to do increase. By grade 5 and 6, as you can see, it's tactical planning and adapting. I'm going to share with you a game called Yoshi today. If you don't know Yoshi, for me, it's one of the best tactical games because there's so many layers to it. So basic locomotor skills. My recommendation is, whenever we're starting out a unit or a year, I do these things from or grade 1, never taught kindergarten, all the way up to grade 12. So never introduce a games unit until you have a baseline of how your students move. And those three, the big four for me are, again, where are they looking? Can they see space? Can they lead and follow? And the last one is, are they being creative? So these four are the lenses that I am evaluating my students constantly. It's the exact same one. Fun. It's so important. I put it in twice for you. So what does this look like? So again, the first one is, we'll just pop back. Where are they looking? And this might seem to be like something that's not that important to focus on. As a specialist for 20 years, we can simplify a lot of kids' challenges and their issues by breaking these skills down to minute little things. Now, if you are a specialist, what I'm hoping for you is that this series will also give you some resources to then take to any generalist that you're working on. I find it really hard here to actually sit down and do workshops with my generalists. I have quite a few of them. There's 9 of us who teach phys ed in my building. So sometimes just having a quick 15, 20-minute video, just this one thing. Hey, this week, let's focus on paying attention to where your kids are looking when they're running through the gym. You'll see at the stop that there's a progression: walking, speed walking, jogging, running. Like everything, we're not going to jump into like a game of pin the tail tag, where you stick the flag in your tail and you run around. If that's in the first couple of weeks working with your students, unfortunately, we're setting ourselves up for some pretty big injuries. Okay? Big injuries that happen in elementary and in junior high. Number one is water on the floor. Throwback to the safety talk we did. If there's water on the floor, if you have clothing on the floor, it happened to me today. I was playing badminton with my team and I was warming up a student, and another kid dropped a hoodie right behind me. And I took a step back and ended up on my side, almost hit my head on a bench. Right. So I digress. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a safety nut. Coming back. Number one is water and clothing on the floor. Number 2 is collisions. Now, the only way we get collisions is when a kid is running and trying to see who's chasing them. And this happens in every sport, especially when we're learning that base level for the sport. So here, all through open space with no collisions, that's the goal. So can your class literally walk through the space without hitting each other or bumping into each other? You'll be amazed at how many elementary classes actually struggle with this. So one of the things that you can add in, which brings in some of the dance and the gymnastics thing, is to introduce this idea of positive and negative space. Okay, so positive, negative space. I am positive space because you can touch it. Negative space is all the space around me. One of the biggest challenges, as we'll see in a bit, is this idea of spreading out. So can students stay in their positive space and only negative space outside of that? Next thing down, can we change direction? And for me, this is a beautiful way to actually embed some of your routines. Everyone has a different philosophy now. I'm a voice guy, so I use a whistle if it's playing basketball. Some people have the hand whistle, the bell. I like the bell. Some people have a funny little sound, a horn. However you want to get your students' attention, this is how I practice it, right up to grade 12. Okay, I have 3 commands, and I'll just say, okay, everyone just start walking around. Great, looks great. Jog. Okay, I want to see you run, and let's just see. And stop them, have them turn, have them sit, whatever you need them to do. When we start changing directions, this is when the wheels fall off again. Remember, the elementary brain is kind of like a dirt road compared to our 4-lane highways. Right? It's going to take them a lot of time to build those repetitions in. So for changing direction, what I'm going to have them do is I'm going to have them jog in a straight line or walk in a straight line. I'm going to have them slow down and stop, physically stop when they start, then look to the direction they're going to go. Is it clear? One decision. If it's not, you're going to look the other way. Is it clear? Turn your body and go. And again, this might seem really elementary, but you'd be amazed at how many students, when they change directions, they turn their body and they're still looking where they were going. That's where you're going to have these collisions. So remember, it's these little things. in grade 1 and 2, a fun thing to do is they have to slow down, stop, and then point, because that tells other people around them. Point, turn your body, and go. Stop, point, go. Stop, point, go. You can do that now while they're running and then slow down the stop till you have a group of kids who are moving through that space, looking where they're going at all time. Right? Next one. So that's the first key. Can they, where is it? Where are they looking? The next one is, can they see space? So in this one, very similar. I'm hoping some of you have coached elementary soccer or like young toddler soccer, grade 1 or grade 1, 2, 3 soccer teams. Most of my parents have had to step up and do that. I love watching that game because it mimics so much of the grade 6s and 7s who come into the junior high side when we're playing ultimate frisbee. Great game for grade 4, 5, 6 and up. But what happens is that if someone throws the disc, everyone clumps around them, right? So if our goal is to create physical literate students who can apply skills across sports, this needs to start when they're wee. Our little kids need to figure out that when we're playing games, it's actually very seldomly advantageous to run to the group. The smart kids, or the ones who understand the tactics down the road, actually run the other way. So again, speed walking, jogging, running. All of these things are going to come into play. My favorite way to explain this is to talk about a peanut butter sandwich. So we'll be playing a game and I'll say, okay, everyone freeze. And usually there's like one clump and then a couple of little kids on the other side, people wandering around, not sure what's going on. And then I talk about the peanut butter or jelly or whatever kids like to put on their thing. Okay. And what we talk about is that if you're going to make a peanut butter sandwich, here's your piece of bread. Would you ever put a giant clump of peanut butter in the middle, then put a piece of bread on top? No, we wouldn't. So we're going to spread the peanut butter. We want to see people spread out all over the gym. And once you like use your own analogies, it doesn't matter. But when you see it, especially when kids are young, it's the perfect opportunity to micro teach. Those of you who have been on my pedagogy series, we're going to micro teach. We're going to whistle it down. We're going to say, everyone freeze, look around. Are you within arm's distance of anyone? If you are, I want to fill the space. We're going to spread the peanut butter. And when we spread the peanut butter, it looks very different. Right? Now, with young kids, we're going to have to do this quite often because they're naturally going to want to clump up. They feel safer. It's just that no one's taught them that. It's just how it works. Right? When you do this with soccer teams, it doesn't take very long before the kids are like, spread it, because they don't want people next to them anymore, right? Because they can't move. This is a great thing to do in tag games. Again, in the gym, remember, it's your gym. The rules my expectations of the gym is if I say stop, you stop, because it's a safety thing. So when we're playing tag, I might just like say, everyone stop, take a look, spread it out. I want to see people all over the place. Go. It's going to take us less than 10 seconds to build that awareness. Now, is every kid going to get it? Not ever. Just like in math, they don't all get it. But the goal is to help them start to see that. Okay. Again, stop and look around. Are you in the clear? Are you in the forest? Whatever analogies. With elementary, actually all the way up to grade 9, really, if we can give them visuals, okay, the mind thinks so much in pictures. Another great way to do it is to pull your class all together, have them play tag in half the gym, a quarter of the gym, and ask them, how does this feel? Like, is this fun? Why isn't it fun? Well, primarily because there's no space. Okay, great little opportunity to slow them down. Okay, can they still, by the way, even with that, remember we were talking about, are you looking? Put them in half the gym. Make it harder for them if it's too easy. Have them jogging around in a quarter of the gym and not touching anyone. You're going to get a lot of cool discussions out of that. So for me, this stuff is actually my first unit. I would spend days doing this stuff. Dots and lines. A lot of people have those floor dots, right? So if we're dealing with, like, say, grade 1s and grade 2s, and you find they just can't spread out, fun little job, fun little thing, have a kid get a dot and they find a spot and they put it down. And again, you talk about spreading it out. Then just have them jog around. Just have them jog around. Okay. When you give them the signal, have them find a dot. Now, you'll notice in here with younger kids, I would have 1 dot per kid if you have that many. If you don't, you could have half. And what happens is that when you give the signal, those kids go to the dot, and all the other kids who don't have a dot, they're just going to keep jogging around, trying to keep out the space. Now, what does this actually do if there's not enough dots for students? Well, early on, you can start to talk about if you want to get on a dot, is it better to stay where there's lots of people? Or is it better to actually kind of look for the spaces or the places where there aren't many kids and there's a couple of dots? Now, this is actually the introduction to tactics. So spatial awareness is so directly related to tactics because as soon as we hit basketball, soccer, ultimate frisbee, rugby, even cricket, right, you really need to learn this idea of spreading out. It's kind of a master skill. It's a keynote skill for students to improve. And when we're not building those scope and sequences and these little tiny things, what happens is that those kids never start thinking that way. They're just like, oh, it's phys ed, we get to run around. Okay. The other cool thing here is that where it says you add your locomotive skills. So remember, the curriculum has these 3 sections in our movement. And there's some really nice work in there where one of the cusps is locomotor skill is skipping, jogging, hopping. Awesome. Okay. Kids can navigate space through different modalities. So now if you have them jogging around with a dot or a line, doesn't matter, they're jogging around, you can say, okay, this next time, because they're on a dot, okay, you've got their attention. Okay, I want you to skip for this next round. I want you to hop. Now, what happens if your kids can't hop? There's a great teachable moment. So instead of using something like this for a warm-up, a lead-up where it's kind of fun like tag, you can actually create an entire like unit just by building this. And if you add in some animal activity, right? We're going to move like cheetahs, have a kid decide. You have to move like a 4-legged animal. A kid lands on a dot. Great. What animal were you? Fantastic. We're all going to do that. Right. So you get back to the space of just playing and moving. I've even seen people do this kind of stuff with music. Music stops, away we go. Okay, great. All right. Sorry, I'm just checking my chat there. And the other neat thing is that we can now start to add some manipulatives. Okay, so once we have kids being able to move through space, we know they're safe. That means like we've done that 3, 4, 5 times, different tag games. We've maybe done a chasing game. We'll talk about lead and follow here in a moment. But the neat thing here is that most games that we play, you can't hold the ball and run with it. Okay? There's a lot that you can, but many of the ones that we do in sport, like handball, ultimate frisbee, even basketball is limited, right? So there's all these kind of things that we have to learn that when we catch a ball, we're going to stop. After I throw a ball, I'm going to move. We look at hockey. When you pass the puck in hockey, generally you're not just stopping and waiting. Okay? When you get rid of the object, that's when you start to move. So this is a neat little game. And again, I have a resource for you that has, I think, 8 tag games in it. These little games throughout. There are an infinite number of games out there. To be honest, most of the games that I play, I'll take an idea from someone and then I just modify it to suit my needs. So a lot of the games I'm playing are just completely nonsensical. I have students come up with ideas for a lot of games. They modify them, they add the rules. And to be honest, in elementary, the more ridiculous, the better. So this one here is a simple little game, collecting treasure, whatever you want to call it. It could be harvesting mushrooms, maybe not mushrooms. Didn't think about that one, but whatever, you can link this to your social studies. You can link this to your science curriculum, embed that vocabulary into your phys ed. There's so many amazing opportunities to build vocabulary these days. So really simple, 6 teams, 6 hoops, 6 beanbags. Okay. So after I've assessed their ability to walk, jog, and run through space, I know that they can stop and turn. I know that when they stop, they're not going to back up without looking because that's not the direction we're going. By the way, the answer to which direction do you look, it's always the direction you're moving. So we have those teams. Each team may have pennies. It's up to you to decide. Younger kids, probably a good idea. And what happens is that kids go and run or jog or skip or crawl, however you want them to move. If you're embedding all kinds of layers, so you can check off 5 or 6 cusps in one class. But so a student goes to another kid's hoop and they pick up a beanbag. That kid can't move. How are they going to move it? Well, now they're going to toss it to one of their teammates. As soon as they toss it to a teammate, they're going to move. They're going to move closer to their hoop. And the goal is to successfully pass those beanbags back to your hoop. End of game. Okay. And it's infinite. It's going to go on forever. Okay. The other thing is that you can add things. So if we drop it, it has to go back to the original hoop. You can add intercepting of passes for the older kids. We can add on rules. So now if I see 2 people on a team passing a beanbag, if I catch it, now I can pass it to someone on my team. Now, I wouldn't add that for the first day or the first 2 days. I might introduce that as we go. Can we play this with other things other than beanbags? Absolutely. Could we do it with a passing instead of a throwing? You bet you can. We could even do it where you get a beanbag and you don't have to pass it, but you have to use a different level of locomotion to get back to your hoop. And these games are cyclical. So you're going to see kids work really hard for a long time and they're going to see progress. You're also going to have to talk about fair play because some groups are going to do better than others. Every elementary teacher knows that when someone's losing, someone's not happy. So a really simple little game, infinite level of variety. You can do this outdoors. I've done something similar to this with Ultimate Frisbee with my grade 5s and 6s, where they have to make 3 or 4 passes before they either drop it or shoot it into a bucket or something like that as well. All right, we're going to get into a big piece of this. So about 15 years ago, I started doing some research into this spatial awareness stuff. And oh, by the way, before I go on, we're actually making really good time. Does anyone have any questions, comments, clarifications at this point? I'll just take a pause here and I'll just take a look at my chat just so I know what's kind of going on. Also have no idea how many participants. There's some people who joined after I was aware. So anyone who's no, we're good. The slideshow and all the resources, the ARPDC, when they send out you the recording, it's my understanding that they send you my slide deck. They'll send you like the pullouts. So I have my summary pullouts. So all of that stuff is embedded within there as well. The other thing is I'll give you my email at the end. So if you can't find it, just send me an email. Okay. I have a really simple website that I built through Google. So I can send you links to all of my other workshops as well. Okay. Thanks for that, Jenna. All right. Looks good. Looks good. All right. So dangers of tag. And ironically, tag is actually one of the most dangerous games we can play in a confined space. But it's also one of the easiest to mitigate with a good scope and sequence. Okay. So why is tag dangerous? Because as soon as you add this level of being chased, what happens is that we start to trigger fight or flight in kids. So tag is literally like controlled panic. Right. And the funniest thing is that as soon as we have someone being chased, they have an adrenaline boost. So they get faster. And often they start running faster than they've ever run before. So now you got this kid who's hooped up on adrenaline. You got a kid who's chasing them because he's hooped up on adrenaline, and they forget to look where they're running, right? My biggest concern in my gym is benches. I hate how many benches are left out in my gym, so I'm constantly moving them. If you think about a wall, I wonder if I can do this. No, it's over here. If you think about a gym, if I've got a gym like this, okay, often we set our benches up kind of like this, right? The big challenge with this is that, unfortunately, you have a lot of edges now showing. Okay, so one of the things that I prefer to do, I have some old doors that actually are against code in gyms. They open out. So I have to use 2 benches to lock it. The big thing here, though, is that if we can push these benches together, right, even create a whole wall of benches on one side, what it does is it eliminates kids running in here and hitting shins. There's nothing worse than the sound of a kid hitting their shin on a bench, because what happens is it swells up and they're horrible. They're horrible and they hurt like mad. Anyway, so when we have that, and a lot of times kids are going to try and see who's behind them. All right. Now, when kids are young, again, my philosophy and my mentors really kind of worked with me a lot on this is that, does it matter who's behind you? Really, it doesn't. The only thing you need to know is when they stop chasing you. And this is where we get into some more tactics. You can hear, you actually have a sense, believe it or not, we have another sense that tells us if someone's pursuing us. Okay. So usually if you don't get tagged, you know you got away because that person will give up and you don't hear their feet going so much. So let's take a look at some scope and sequencing here for tag. Where is it? Right there. I want to show you 3 really short video links. Okay. This is again from a brand new workshop that I put together this year. I think I did it in Calgary and up in Red Deer. I didn't do it in Edmonton this year. But I had some students doing some research on world games, and they found these games from, these 3 are all from India, and some of them are like 1,500, 2,000 years old. But when we think of tag in North America, it's pretty tame. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up. Oh, sorry. There we go. So I just want you to watch this tag. I actually just started this with my kids today. So this is a tag game. And think about this from a strategic standpoint. Oh, I'm sorry about that music. Okay, so that's a game called Coco. Now, Coco is this insane game. I spent half an hour with my grade 9s just learning the rules today, and I have never seen them work harder. Okay, so tag has so many different iterations. This is another one. I don't know if you've heard of Kabaddi. Kabaddi again. Anyway, so the big thing I wanted to make clear is that, like, what we consider tag, the strategy that we're working on actually has a way bigger impact on how they play the rest of the games as they move through their school. So lead and follow. So this is our 3rd big key of the 4. So this is, can they lead and can they follow? Again, everything we're going to do here is going to have walking, speed walking, jogging, running. Okay, so always a progression, especially until you get an understanding of your students. My number 1 activity for this is something called truck and trailer. And now I've been teaching this across the province for over a decade now. And it's just for people who aren't sure how to really break down physical movement. In my phys ed degree, we literally had to break down every movement. So if we're throwing a baseball in my biomechanics degree, we had to look at what was the sequencing, what muscles were firing. How do we actually break that down so we can analyze the differences between different individuals and what works for that individual based on their physiology. So little games like this, I always love it when I find them. So truck and trailer is this cool little lead and follow game. We have 2 people. I had a little hat. We use this. Actually, no, is that a good idea? Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so I have oh, that hurts a lot. That was not a good idea. Used to have a little puppet. Seems to have disappeared on me. All right, so I've got A and I have B. Okay, so I have 2 different people. The basic principle is this. My person in the front is going to be my truck, right? I usually, with kids, I say pick an A, pick a B. So A is going to start to run or walk around the space. B is just going to follow them wherever they go. Now, hopefully you're starting to think, how could I do this a little more creatively? It could be follow the leader. At the same time, you could say, I want a high level, a medium level, and a low level while you're moving. Why? Because now we're also working on those other cusps, right? So one of my big messages this year is that you don't have to do a lot more of what you're doing to meet these cusps. Now, as soon as we say switch, you just say switch. What happens is now the other person is going to lead. So who is the trailer is now pulling the other person along. Okay. Now, where this gets fun is when you get into a little bit more speed. So walking, pretty good. Speed walking, now the truck's job is to put some space between them and the trailer. Okay. So it does get, you can start to imagine, I've got 20, 30 kids running around and they're trying to follow. Remember, the most important thing to do is to look at your partner in the direction you're going. As we get up to jogging, what happens is that you get these big gaps that form. Okay. So with little kids, you're not going to get going that fast. Grade 5 and 6, you're going to get these kids going pretty quick, but always coming back to talk about those keys. Are you moving to open space? It's dangerous to be running in and out of people. Look for open space, and you're trying to not lose your trailer, but to give them a good workout. Okay. So that's the game. You switch, find a new partner, switch. And they get used to this idea that when I'm playing tag, if I lock my eyes on a target, I'm good. Okay. I can pursue them. But the other thing is that as soon as we have this little bit more speed, they actually have to start using their peripheral vision, right? We can see a lot on the sides, but very few kids now know how to use that. So if I'm chasing one person, eventually when we get to tag, if I see someone who's not moving as fast, I can leave the person I'm chasing or following, and I can change directions and go and try and tag them. Okay? So what often happens in elementary tag is that one kid will lock onto another kid and they won't stop until they tag them or they burn out. Not really a useful skill, right? Because they're going to be chasing their friends, and now we've actually lost that team spirit, that teamwork piece. So I love this because it allows us to break down those social norms of I have to take a friend, but if I see someone closer, I'm going to want to change and go to see that person using my peripheral vision. Right? So that's the basic one. The next thing we're going to do is, again, you can add levels, you can add different creativity things, you can add different forms of locomotion. So every time I say switch, now they're going to skip, or now they're going to crawl, now they're going to sidestep, now they're going to grapevine, all things from your locomotor cusps. Next one is switch, change, unhook. So we ramp this up. So now I'm going to take two groups. So I had two groups like this, 1, 2. I'm now going to have 4 kids in a line. Or 3, however your numbers work. Okay. Now the person in the front is still the truck. Okay. So they're running around. They're not holding on to each other. They're running around. And when I say switch, what happens is that they change direction. So now we're following the person in the other lead. Okay. So we're going back and forth. We do that for maybe a minute. Then we add change. So change means this. So switch means we're reversing the line, we're going the other way, we're switching directions. Change is we're going to change the leader. So this person out in front, they're going to step out and they're going to wait for the trailer to get there, and they're going to end up in the back. So they literally go to the back of the line. We keep going in the same direction. So switch directions, change the leader, right? So if this is my leader and I say change, that person is going to step up or like step aside, and we're all now following this person. Okay, the second in line. Then we say change, have a new leader, and they still have 4 people running in line, but we're changing that leader. So we do this sometimes for like 5 minutes, because now you get creative. You go switch, change, switch. And again, walking, speed walking, jogging. This gets a little chaotic when they're running full out. So I try to keep it to a jog. So right there, now we're embedding all of these signals. We're starting to give people the opportunity to change roles within a designated time frame, right? Offense, defense. Going from offense and defense is exactly what the switch is. When you say switch and 2 people switch and they switch, they go back the other way, you're doing exactly what it takes to switch from offense to defense. You have to change your direction. You have to change your focus. You're no longer leading it. Defense is actually another form of following. Okay, so this is why I'm so why I love this thing so much is because what it does is it allows us to move from offense to defense really quickly down the road. Okay. Now the last one is where this gets completely unhinged. Okay. Hey, Roger, I'll walk up. Thanks. When we say unhook, what happens is that whoever is the truck at that time puts their hand up and they just start slow kind of marching on the spot. Everyone else in their trailer is going to break up and they go find a new truck to follow. As soon as there's 4 people or 3, whatever you're setting it up as, the last person in the trailer says go, and we start again. So now you have switch, change, and unhook. Okay, sometimes unhooked, you got kids who don't find a group and they just start running around on their own. Other people join them, and there's no right or wrong. So if kids don't do it right, do we care? Well, we kind of care, but we also can honor the fact that they couldn't find a group. They just made their own. Okay, that's fantastic. And again, always the creativity. Okay. The next session I'm going to be leading on this sequence is more about the creative side, but you can imagine how much creativity you can put in this. Follow the leader, great way to do it. You can give them more parameters, hopping on one foot, bunny hopping. Okay. The person who is in charge of that group, they could make some decisions. Right. So that's truck and trailer. Honestly, like in elementary, I used to do this for a week, just that. We would move around, we'd do that kind of stuff. So off-road. So this is advanced truck and trailer. So advanced truck and trailer, you can add like more of the things from like outside. Okay. You can add off-roading. So now that person has to like move more sporadically. You can add more creative movement to that. One of the things I do from time to time is I put on different kinds of music. So they actually have to move inspired to the music. So now I've got AC/DC, I've got African drums, I've got Brahms, I've got Imagine Dragons, I have George Michael, like whatever it is. We can embed so much stuff in there to keep their brains thinking. So the spatial movement piece becomes automatic. Right. Now in here, I've added a link to this. There's another truck and trailer tag that's a little bit like crazy. Because what happens is that 2 people hold on to each other's hips. So the person in the back, and their job is to prevent the 3 or 4 people who are running around from attaching to their hips. So I'm holding on to my partner. As soon as one of the free agents, or whatever you want to call them, one of the free trailers hooks up to my hips, I let go of my truck and I become the truck. So the truck and trailer actually have to maneuver themselves as a single unit. Okay, so I have a video for you to watch on that if you're interested. It's insane. Okay, but super fun because you'll be running or jogging, and as a truck, there's just no one holding you anymore. So then you take off. I know some teachers aren't okay with students holding each other's hips. You could do shoulders, but that's up to you to make that call. All right, so quick touch point on creativity. Our next session is looking at how to embed dance, gymnastics, some of the parameters around improvisational dance into every part of your phys ed, not just as a standalone unit. The big thing is if you notice your students getting bored, especially in elementary, shift it. Okay, give them a challenge. Can they walk sideways? Can they walk with holding their hand on their hip all the time? Okay, it's called moving through limitation. Have them hold their hands together in front of them and do all the motion that way. Have them have their hands on their hip. Have them drag their right toe. Right? It's these things. And the cool thing is once students get used to that, they'll come up with their own parameters and they'll suggest them. Some of my best days teaching in elementary was when we were doing animal stuff. And every kid in the class, we couldn't stop playing the game, which is basically a find open space, until every kid got to say their animal. And that's how we kind of build that enjoyment. Right. And the other thing is that creativity and tactics, when we start to increase the complexity of the games and the higher grades, Yoshi is this interesting game. It's basically capture the flag with no flag. So in essence, what happens is, and this is the link right to the video that explains it, but you have 2 teams and it's in a rectangle like so, and there's a center line. That's it. In the video, they use a mat. I don't do that. I just use an end line. The goal is to get your entire team to across the other team's end line. That's it. Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Jenna. So once you get your whole team to the other side, you win. Okay, that's it. The key here, though, is that if you get tagged, you freeze, and someone from your team has to safely run and tag you, and then you get to walk back. Okay. The neat thing is that it builds this invasion game with tag, with strategy. So the first time they play it, it takes forever. But then kids start to figure out, well, if we leave one person in the field, then we can actually win easier. And the tactics are going to shift. So I wanted to put this in here. I'm not going to talk about it a lot because the game is pretty straightforward. But the more you play it, especially the first time when you teach it to a group of kids, you'll start to see the strategy. And that's what we're going to give them. A minute, 2 minutes. Talk about it. Who's going to be the person who stays back? Who's the fastest on the team? We probably want them to not cross over yet. Or if they do, what role can they play? Right. So again, a handful of games, you can create these really neat units. All right. So I promised that I was going to go through the cusps for this specific thing. And our timing is looking spot on right now. So we have these knowledge, understandings, and procedures. Please remember that it's the last column that is what we are held to when we are doing our evaluations. Okay? This is what used to be called our outcomes. Okay? The knowledge is what they kind of want, what we're supposed to teach. The understanding gives us a little more background, but the skills and procedures, that's what I have on my mark sheet. That's what I'm assessing on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. That's what I'm using to inform my report cards. Our 8 dimensions for phys ed or the physical education and wellness, right? All of the stuff we're looking at in this session is the movement skills, specific parts of it. And this is from my curricular one, if you didn't see it. So you'd see this movement. This is the number 2. So this one little section, movement and skill development, it breaks down into these 3 categories. Now, this took a long time to figure out and to kind of break down and to isolate. But in movement, we have this 2A. So 2A is where all of these spatial awareness cusps are located. They're usually the first in the line. Okay. The movement skills, there are some key ones in here. This is where a locomotive, non-locomotor, symmetrical, asymmetrical are. So there's some really nice crossover between these 2 things. Okay. So it's the 2A and the 2B elements are the cusps that we're going to be evaluating with the spatial awareness stuff that I've been talking about. So I'm going to jump into this one summary sheet. Where is it over here, actually? Spatial awareness. This is the document that I've created for you, everyone that'll go with us. This is the full movement skills. It's on 3 pages. It's a big document, but it's a big curriculum. So this has grades 1 to 6, it's all 3 components of the movement. Okay, but this is the part that when I finally built this, I was like, yep, that's it. This is what I'm looking for. So this is my skill development per grade, per cusp. So you'll see in kindergarten, it's body awareness facilitates movement. Students explore spatial awareness in a variety of physical education contexts. Okay, that's the overarching idea. The big thing that we're evaluating on is practice movement with spatial awareness. Everything I just showed you would cover that. In grade 2, let's just look at the SPs over here. Demonstrates various ways to move safely through space. Done. Demonstrate appropriate response to environmental cues. So environmental cues are other students. I think this is clearer over here. There we go. Oh, that's much clearer. Let's go there. Let's pump this up a little bit. Sorry. There we go. So cues, what are cues? That's you. There's a bench over there. I'm not going to run into it. There's a cone. It's important I don't step on that. There's someone coming in my peripheral vision. Next one, this is grade 3 or grade 2. Scan and assess surroundings to support spatial awareness. Every game I talked about will hit that. Refine movement skills in relationship to people and objects in physical activity. What is refining? So the key here is that as the kids get better at it, we're going to talk about how to make better decisions. Spreading the peanut butter. Is it better to clump up when you're playing tag or to spread out? Who is it that you should watch? If you've got, where's the best place to stand when you're playing tag? In the middle or on a wall? Right? How can I effectively scan every student to see who's it? I'm a big fan of old school tag where kids don't know who's it because they have to scan all the time. This next one here is fascinating because it's modify and adapt gameplay based on awareness of spatial changes. So this is where we give students the opportunity to maybe change the space of a game, okay, or to change a rule of a game because it's not working based on the space we have or the kids we have or the equipment we have. These are really quick discussions to give kids that opportunity. Okay, grade 3, now we're looking at tactics already. For me, this is in participants and situations. So how do the tactics need to change? The ones that are in kind of bright blue are ones that I think are essential. So in this one, when we're playing tag, there's tactics involved in that. How do you effectively tag someone or not tag or transfer? Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I will look at the grade 6 ones because you'll see they get more and more as they get down. So here's some grade 5s. Assess the effectiveness of tactics in various physical activities and game structures. Recognize how changes in rules influence tactics used. So a game like Yoshi, again, we can add rules, we can take out rules and just talk about that. A lot of phys ed is just discussion. It's giving kids the opportunity to talk through things. Right. So this is the big thing. So when you're dialing into these expectations, having the summary document and focusing on 1 or 2, maybe 3 of them at a time with however you're doing your checkbox or whatever tool you're using to assess. Again, I have a micro teaching. It's about 15 minutes on how I assess and how to make it efficient. If you have a system, use it. They're all good. But if you identify the customer you're focusing on, what you focus on will expand. So what you're asking them to do, what you're talking about, what vocabulary you're using, you're going to see it improve. So using one of these tracking tools where you go, for the next couple of days, I'm going to focus solely on how these kids move through space. For me, that's, can they see space? Do they spread into space? Can they lead and follow? And are they being creative? Oop, wrong button. There we go. So a couple of other key terms. These are things that students need to know in order, in order to follow instructions. So what is personal space? What is general space? That's our positive and negative, right? What is our locomotion? So this is moving, non-locomotor skills. This is where we get really creative. It's high, medium, low, right? It's twisted, it's straight, it's floppy, it's noodly. Symmetrical, asymmetrical. These things show up in the cusps, and sometimes that's all they are. So we can actually tick off those boxes as you see them. Oh wait, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. Yeah, Yoshi is unbelievable. This new Coco, this tag game that I showed you, it's the same thing. Like the tactics are endless. After about 5 minutes of playing, it was incredible to see groups start coaching each other on how to do it. Some other things. In order to assess students, they also have to have some of this basic vocabulary. Do they know what their forearms are in the older grades? Do we have left and right? I still don't have left and right sometimes, right? But do they know their head? Do they know their hips? Do they know their thighs? Do they know their calves? The older kids can handle hamstrings, biceps, quadriceps. But are we embedding that within? Right? If we're talking about nouns and verbs and adverbs with our students in ELA, why are we not using these proper terms with our students in elementary? Directions in the gym. I have a stage, I have an exit wall, I have a climber wall, and I have the equipment room. So can you get kids to go to different walls in an instant? Directions, yeah, top, bottom, front, and back. I know that sounds silly. They may know how to do it in class, but if you have students start to play around with activity and you talk about front and back, some of those kids may not even know where the back of the line is. So it's just being really clear with that. Speeds, defining speeds, fast, medium, low. Later on in the older grades, we're going to talk about levels of intensity, which is mild exercise, moderate exercise, and vigorous. How do we define moving fast and slow? Want to have fun with little kids? Have them move as slow as they possibly can. And watch how many of them can only do it for about 10 seconds. Another one is reference lines. Do they know what inside cones versus outside cones? Inside lines versus outside of lines? On the mats, beside the mats, behind the pole. Again, these things we kind of take for granted, but often we actually have to teach that over and over and over or demonstrate it. Remember, what they see, they'll remember more. This stuff here comes from a really cool document from Quebec. I have this PDF for you guys as well, but it just talks about kind of at what like grade level, cycle 1, this is like elementary. So elements of body. So can they identify main parts of the body? Can they locate their main body parts in space? Left, right, your left arm, right arm. Simple warm-ups, right? Where's your left arm? Imbalance and dizziness. So it just has some really interesting things to follow along. That they break it down by about what age they're supposed to be at. Okay, so again, I do have that built out for you as well. It's an online document, so I just pulled it for you. Tag resource, I'll just pull this up as well. So I brought this one from there they are, PE Shed. So throughout my series is I'm trying to give you a couple of different resources from different websites. So I've just gone on and pulled 5 or 6 different tag games that don't require manipulatives. Okay, some of them have 1 or 2. So it's just got your dance tag, super fun. Beanbag. So this is similar to what I was showing you, slightly modified. So I've got a few of those in there for you. And what else do I have? This is the actual, let's back up. I also have the spatial awareness resource. It's not complete yet, but it has like some truck and trailer tag. It has some chasing tactics from Kayford, from that. So this is something I'm still working on, but I'll make sure I PDF that for you as well. Other than that, is that it? Yeah, I'll show you this. This is the next one. This is on April 22nd. So we're going to look at some more specific dance and gymnastic activities to really bring in the creative side. We're going to talk a little more on the advanced level tactics, how to bring those into some of these things. And I will show you pieces of my assessment tool. This is me. Yeah, Coco. So I sent me a message to Alyssa. Coco is insane. To get all of the rules for it, I ended up watching probably about 2 hours of videos in Hindi to try and analyze, like just to figure out what was going on. It's super fun. I am going to, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to thank everyone for coming. Give me a moment. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll go into our Q&A in case you have that.